So welcome everybody to Control+M Presents, our contribution to the general increase in knowledge of the Plex community. We believe the more you know about Plex, the more you're going to love using it. And we're glad to be back doing these sessions. We've had a really busy first quarter, and it feels very good to be back to doing what we love. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and it will be posted up on our YouTube channel later on this week, along with all the other ones that we've done. And we're continuing to translate these videos into Spanish as Ignacio Zuniga has time to do that. So please take a few minutes to check us out. If you like what you see, leave us a thumbs up and subscribe. My name's Patty Nowak. I'm the owner of Control+M Solutions. I'm the owner of Control+M Solutions. We're a Plex partner with employees in the US, Canada, Mexico, and we have clients all over the world. So we're pretty excited to be working in Canada, United States, and Mexico. We've got clients in Canada, United States, Mexico, Brazil, Amsterdam, Germany, and now France. In fact, we're going to go live in France next month. We're pretty excited about. Today's going to be a special session. It's a subject that we don't have answers for, believe it or not. One that we're going to focus on using the power of the Plex community to find a solution to a problem that a number of folks have called us about. Before we do any introductions, I really want to level set goals here. So typically in our presentations, we come to the table with a solution to your issues already developed, and we show you how to execute it. But in this case, we were called by two different clients within the same week that had the same problem. And my first thought was, if two of our clients have this problem, then there's got to be more folks in the community that have the same problem. So let's have a discussion to see how we can resolve it. This is also the first time we've invited clients and Plex to our sessions to speak. So without any further ado, let's start with introductions. So we're very excited to have you here. My name's Patty Nowak. Like I mentioned, I'm the owner of Control+M Solutions. I'm here as a moderator. I have literally zero value added because I don't know much about EDI. Here at Control+M, we leverage the idea of subject matter experts, and I'm certainly not an SME for EDI. I'd like our panel members to introduce themselves, and to keep things organized, let's just go in order on the screen that they go in the order that they're on the screen here. So take it away, Veronica.
Hi, I'm Veronica Meyer. I've been working with Plex since 2013, doing EDI for multiple customers. I've been with Patty since 2019. And by the way, when I say I've been doing EDI for a long time, I first started EDI way back when Walmart requested it.
Wow, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Albie?
So I'm Albie Bell. I am the Operations Manufacturing Engineering Manager at Kuchster North America. I also am a program manager for us and our Plex champion. We went live with Plex in January 1st of 2018. We were probably the last classic implementation that was ever went live. One of our PCNs is switched into UX, and our plant is in the process of making the transition now. So super excited about today's session.
Thanks, Albie. Bob?
Yep, my name is Bob Bielak. I'm the IT manager for Detroit Thermal Systems. This company has been in existence since 2013. We're a startup that we purchased all the production assets from Ford Sheldon Road facility to build the HVACs and move them about 10 miles away. I've actually been involved with Plex since about 2004. I was a developer for Plex back in 04, 05, and this is the second PCN, actually three. The first was a parent PCN with the wholly owned subsidiary, but this is actually my third Plex implementation. First was a complete rollout from scratch. Second was a migration from what was known then as Plex on Earth, the old progress-based Plex database or Plex system before it went to the web. And then coming over here to Detroit Thermal Systems, I'm actually currently active employee number 3 out of 800 current. I've been here since day one, so it was a complete rollout, brand new of Plex. And we're probably about, I say me mostly, about a third of the way through migrating to UX. So that's where I'm at.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Sola?
Hi. This is Sola Oduntan. I'm a product manager with Plex, and I've been with Plex for 10 years now, and been.
Mike Acosta 225. Mike Acosta 225.
And during that time, I've been a product manager pretty much all that time. Started off as the product manager. Actually started off in the MES area. Did that for a while, but the majority of my time I've spent in the planning and scheduling area. Was responsible for the MRP and PRP solutions, finite scheduling, Kanban, and was also was on the team that led the partnering with Demandcaster supply chain planning solution, and then implementation with our first customer, as well as before we acquired it. And now I've moved over to the Demandcaster team, where I'm a product manager with the planning and scheduling team there.
Thank you, Shola. Once again, to Albie, Bob, and Shola, appreciate you guys joining us in the hopes of finding a solution here for the problem at hand. So, speaking of that, let's first talk about rules of engagement. We've never hosted a roundtable here at Control+M Presents before, so we might struggle a bit, and I'm going to ask you to be patient with allowing, we want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to get your points across. If your connection is creating a lot of background noise, I may mute you, but feel free to unmute yourself when you want to contribute. If I mute you accidentally, definitely it'll be unintentional. We want to make sure that this is an open forum. So if you are more comfortable just using the chat feature, I will keep my eye on the chat program while it's going here and monitor that to make sure your questions are answered. Our only real goal here is to avoid chaos while hopefully we find a solution to the issue at hand. So I'm going to go through just 3 or 4 slides before we open the floor to open discussion. So please bear with me for just a few minutes. Like I mentioned, this issue was brought to our attention when 2 clients called within the same week with the same problem. And it's really this: your customers are sending in what you believe is completely unrealistic demand for future visibility. And then when it comes time to convert that demand to shipments, it's dropped significantly. In the example here, our customer has been telling us they want 250 widgets a week, but when it comes time to actually do the shipping, they're changing that quantity from 250 down to maybe 75. And your gut is telling you that next week the customer is not going to want 250, they're going to want 75 or maybe 50, maybe 100, but they're not going to want to take all 250. So is this what you're seeing out in the marketplace? And you can chat or answer. Jill, we should have been smart and put up a poll here, but this is the understanding of the issue as both Bob and Albie brought to me. Would you say so, Albie and Bob?
Yeah, that's spot on for us. And we've actually had with several customers. One customer does match their shipment call-ups correctly. The other sends it through a manual process, but both definitely drop significantly in the weeks prior to shipping and even the week of.
Right, and Amy put in the chat, managing this volatility it's become challenging, and because there's not really necessarily an easy way to do it. And there are also 2 sides to this issue. There's the legal side. What are your obligations to your customers? And then there's the realistic side, the supply chain, capacity planning, cash flow, and so on. And there are some significant downstream ripples or implications that I want to get into before we get into potential solutions, things for us to think about while we come up with solutions. So number 1, overdriving that demand for raw materials that can stress an already stressed supply chain. And it's not just your suppliers, it's your buyer, it's the price you're paying, it's the expedite fees for materials that you might not necessarily need. Also, we're having to do mental MRP. So Annie just dropped in. You have issues where building parts and all the requirements disappear. That's probably the worst ever. we're overrepresenting capacity and personnel requirements. What if we hire a bunch of people on to make these parts and then the demand falls out the bottom? And so that's probably one of the worst things we can do is bringing on more personnel and let them go, and tying up capital. Obviously, if we're buying any sort of resources that we need, what if the demand tells us we've got to expand our footprint? That would really be rough. So we want to reduce this unnecessary stress on our systems, our processes, and our people. So the first thing that I tried, we wanted to try some interesting things. When Bob first called me, I thought, well, I'm a kind of person in Plex that likes to, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And the first thing that we tried was putting in a negative customer order. And just to clarify to everybody what I mean by that, I've got in here a part called breakfast that has a 75 quantity ordered. But when I look at those customer releases, you can see I've got a positive order for 100 pieces and a negative order for 25 pieces. So I said to Bob, gosh, if I could get this to jam all the way down to MRP, that would be awesome. It would be great. PRP looks pretty good. PRP sees that net of 75, but MRP is where we get into a little trouble. So in the MRP system here, we can see I had created a job for my 75 pieces, but MRP is still seeing a parent demand of those 25 pieces. MRP still sees that we need 100. So PRP was built to handle that negative quantity, but MRP was not. And I guess I don't really blame anybody here for that. Certainly, who would have thought to build a planning engine that handled negative quantities, right? So I thought it was worth the 30 minutes of testing. But like I said, who would have thought that was built in? This technically could work for you if you are not using net demand. So if you're the type of person, a type of company that's not using net demand, often glossarized as parent demand, this might work for you. I'm not really fond of that though, because I think net demand is a really helpful tool to make sure that you never run out of parts. Some people have it turned off because they think that it double dips. I'm going to give you a hint. It does not, but that's a subject I'd be happy to have in another separate session. So if you want to talk about why you think MRP double dips and how I can prove to you that it doesn't, reach out. I haven't had anybody challenge me that I haven't proven to them that it's not double dipping yet. Also, if you have Plex set up to automatically create your jobs for you, and I'm not talking about the demand caster creation, I'm talking about the actual Plex automatic job creation. I'm not sure what would happen because we didn't test it. So long story short is a negative order, a quantity was not necessarily a great solution, but it might work for you. We had similar results with a negative quantity and forecast. So I can put up a negative forecast, but MRP gets just as confused by that. Also, it's been our experience that most people who are using EDI with forecasting, you don't get your forecasts in with the Plex forecast module. You get them in as a release type of forecast. So if you got a release type of forecast and you had a forecast, you could be doubling your forecast. So most people with EDI, we are finding, are not integrating that forecast module with the planning engines. So I thought it was worth a try. Again, MRP outsmarted me. And I think this is about the time that I ran out of ideas. So I called in Veronica and I asked her, hey, could we edit those EDI documents? And after Veronica scraped herself up off the floor in shock that I would suggest such a crazy thing, well, I'll let Veronica share her thoughts with you on that, because she wasn't too fond of me for mentioning that to the customer. So go ahead, Veronica, and let's talk about how that happens or how it's done.
So you can, right, because it's an inbound EDI, you can then download it, right? Go into a text editor, make your changes, upload the file, and then apply it. So it involves, multiple things, which is you can no longer auto apply that customer's inbound documents. You're stopping them. Then you're manually editing them. And if you fat finger something, or if you delete a piece of the code that it's needed, it's going to fail in the upload, and it's going to take you much more time to fix it and go back to square one. Once you upload it, you're lying to the system. You've now changed your customer's requirements, and you have no visibility of what they truly wanted or what they truly expected. And some of these documents can be 100 lines long. That's a lot of editing to do.
So it's really introducing quite a bit of risk. And, to Annie's point, manipulating the EDI defeats the purpose of EDI. And I once worked for a company too, where they would get the EDI documents in, print them out and key them in. And this was a Plex customer. And I asked them, why do you do that? They said, because we just don't trust our customer EDI. And this was back in 2007, 2006. And I thought, my goodness, that's crazy. I've been working with EDI I've been exposed to EDI since 1993 back at Oshkosh B'gosh with JCPenney. So I was surprised that, 30 years later, we're still dealing with that issue. So the reason we wanted to get everyone in today was to say, what have you done to try this? I mean, obviously we can go into I think it's the customer release mass update or customer mass update release or something like that. So let's talk about what you've done. So Amy, you've implemented a few processes to help manage the solution, release change report in classic Plex and a frozen fence. So Amy, I'm familiar with the release change sales report. Actually, Jagam and Stamping developed that with our secret Plex user group, the SPUG, back in 2008 with Fine Tool and Morgul and Batesville. We had the secret group. So I'll bring that up while you talk about the frozen time fence, okay?
Yeah, so one of our largest customers, all their majority of the releases come in via EDI, and we would have the shipments assembled, ready to go, and their EDI would have requirements dropping in or dropping out either way. And so what we did is we worked with our largest customer and implemented a 2-week frozen time period, meaning that it's based on business days. So we take 10 plus whatever the transportation lead time days is. So if your lead time days for transportation is 4, you'd put your frozen fence in for 14 days. And during that time period, Plex would not update release quantities, even if the customer was dropping in or pulling out. Now, initially we had some hiccups and pain points in that the customer, wasn't getting what they thought they'd be getting because there isn't that feedback loop from EDI or from Plex back to the customer. But with several reminders and, really diligent communication, they've been on board and our issues have really declined. Now, once we get from that 2 to 6 week time period and, with material lead times, what they are, it's really important that we're keeping a close eye on our releases that are coming in from customers. We've used the release change sales report. There are some struggles with that report that we're working through currently. For example, when a customer gives us a release forecast and then it changes to a ship scheduled or locked release, Plex sees that as a new release, not as the same release that's just being updated. So there's some things we're working through internally to really be able to trust that data coming through that report.
Beautiful. Does anyone know the name of that report in UX? I mean, I see there's a customer release change report. I'm going to have to guess that's it. In my test PCN, there won't be much to look at. I'll make sure that I get the name of that report. So I'm going to I put some empty slides in here. Let's see. We'll jot some ideas down. So in here, we're going to say the release change sales report and frozen forecast, right, Amy? What about using a customer portal?
You're saying for customer.
You mentioned that Plex does not have that feedback to the customers. What about using the customer portal?
I don't know enough about it, honestly, to say. That might be an option.
Okay. I'm just going to put here, could we use the customer portal to communicate back to customers? Thoughts on that?
I don't think Ford's going to log into Plex to get communication back from little old us.
Good point, Bob. Would they look at any? I mean, that's a point well taken. Would they look at any feedback at all that we gave them?
They haven't looked at any feedback at all from us. It's basically, I mean, we're just obviously, well, I say we're a small cog in the wheel. We produce the HVAC, the heating and ventilation air conditioning unit for, at one point it was 80% of all North American market Ford pass car, SUV and light truck. We're down a little bit over the last couple of years, but we're still sending 50,000 HVACs a week off to Ford. But still, it's the game with the big three and with the larger manufacturers that, you know, we don't change things for you, you change things for us. So our biggest, which you've actually already gone over quite well, our biggest issue is we'll get, you know, weekly release in, and Ford says, you know, and we've got about 50 we have about 50 to 60 OEM part numbers, doesn't include service, but OEM HVACs that go into Ford, any of their locations. Each one of those can have 50, 60, 70 component parts. And we're having to cut down 30, 40, 50, 60% of what we expected to ship out week after week. And then some weeks it's fine. And we're currently almost having to manage it at a component level, because you really can't do anything with the releases other than manually changing them, which is good for a day. And then you get potentially you get your date delivery schedules or an updated release in the middle of the week, and that kind of jams up your cost. So you lose kind of visibility of what you thought you were going to build or what you wanted to build and what they really sent you. So it's a difficult task. But no, Ford and I can only, again, they're about 98% of our customer base is Ford Motor Company. But they're not real easy to work with when it comes to, you know, things of this nature. They're basically saying, yep, we're just gonna keep sending you these releases, and you get to react whether, you know, we want 1 or 100.
Thanks, Bob. Annie has a question. Can you do frozen fence for specific customers? So she said, I can't see us freezing Stellantis and then telling them we missed a shipment because they changed their requirement. I don't think you can, but Amy, do you know if you can?
Yes, the setting is customer specific. It's it's on the ship to for the customer. So if you go into again, we're still on Classic, where our customer service department has not migrated to UX yet. We're in the process of, but within Classic, if you navigate to the customer record and customer list, and then click on the ship to, it's in the same area where you enter your transportation lead time days. It's in that same section.
Okay, so I'm going to guess that's going to be done in the shipping area here.
I see it on the customer address details screen within Classic. It's frozen fence days is the name of the field. And then there's another setting you need to enable for frozen fence process, either next available or not accepted. And the way we have ours configured is we're using next available. So if your frozen fence is set at, let's say 15 days, day 16 or the next available ship date after day 15 is where it will make that adjustment, either adding in to match the ACUM or decreasing to match the ACUM.
I just saw the notes on that setting. Is this specific only to the SDS, or is this also for the weekly releases, these frozen fences?
That I don't know.
Okay, because our issue is not with the daily, what we're supposed to ship daily. Our issue is with the weekly releases that we're getting from them. So if a frozen fence is only applicable to 862s and or sequence load stuff, then it really doesn't.
I think we're using it on 830s. We're
Okay.
using it with our 830s.
So despite the fact that this setting specifically calls out the 862 and the 866, you're seeing that useful on the 830s as well?
Correct.
If we look at the add date of the setting, I'm not surprised that it's not fully, that the explanation is not fully flushed out.
Most of these explanations, descriptions are not. This Plex after all, right?
I think at the time somebody did the best job they could, and it's possible that it was developed in 2014 to only work on those two documents. So to Bob's point, it's always worth a try. I don't know if your name is Tammy or Tammy, but Tammy Newman said automotive customers will not go for frozen days. So from a business logic perspective, how do you handle that then, Tammy?
And I just want to comment on that as far as auto customers not going for it. I mean, define not going for it. We have to manage the business internally. It's our responsibility to ship what they're asking us for. the automotive, my customers aren't going to come in here and tell me what color, and I'm not being facetious here, but they're not going to come in here and tell me you can't paint your walls this color and you can't make this color and you can't do this in your own ERP system. All they need to worry about is whether or not I'm sending them product on time, good product on time. So.
Agreed. And it's kind of a partnership,
Yeah,
right?
we know for a fact that if it was something like modifying the releases manually, we know the risk that we're running, and we accept that, but it's something that we as a company have to do in order to slim down we're probably $3 or $4 million carrying inventory, $3 or $4 million at any given time because of these unrealistic demands not panning out. So Ford's not going to help us. They're not going to cut the releases down to what they really should be. So we have to do it internally. So we are taking that risk. So as far as the automotive customers not going for something, again, I'm not familiar with frozen days, believe it or not, 17 years with Plex. But if that is something, there's obviously a lot in Plex, so not everybody can know everything. But if that's something that we could manually manipulate, our thought on this was we were just going to manually manipulate the first 4 weeks of the weekly releases for the customer end items, upload them, and then allow those to generate our supplier releases, and those go out Monday night, and then we're good for the next week until the next one. And we know, and leave that bubble, what have you, on the 5th week. We know we have that risk there, but it's something that we have to be able to do to remain viable, whether or not the automotive customer likes it or not.
So one of the things I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to say, one of the things we did before we implemented this is it's an automotive customer, and we worked closely with them. We got their buy-in ahead of time, and they actually configured their SAP system to align so that they're showing that same time period as being locked within their system. It was one of the ways we could, kind of control and set expectations with them.
I think that's super interesting, and it solves the short term, because we definitely at Kuster see the short term volatility, and we've got a couple of delivery points, one with a longer transit time, the other with a short transit time, where it's easier to accommodate those changes. In the long-term forecast, we're also seeing that volatility on their side being way high, and certainly our inventory is up. One of the things that I did try on the automotive forecast was loading in a level demand for that forecast, and it does bring up the demand for the weeks and months that were below that quantity, but then it also allows the demand to stay higher than it was in the demand. So it never pulls down the customer demand. So in reality, it increases the overall demand. Let's say from would like to have week 12 out be driven by the forecast module and not by the EDI releases. In that blue line that is in PRP and ERP from Patty's example, we wanted that to drive what would trickle down into MRP and the demand, so that we were giving our suppliers super consistent releases and filtering out the noise from the customer in that standpoint. So if there was a way to have the PRP and MRP only listen to the forecast module and that blue line in months and weeks further beyond a given fence, that would be super awesome. I think, because then you're not manually changing anything. You're not doing it. You do have to do it weekly after people update their EDI or whatever that frequency is, but then it's not document by document and things like that. You could make a template that uploads fairly simply, week after week. Anybody have any guesses in that neck of the woods on the outbound, the further fence out?
Thinking there are two different ways to integrate forecast into classic. I don't know if there's forecast integration 1, which has been gone since about 2012. I shouldn't say gone, hasn't been developed since about 2012. And then there's forecast V2. So I feel as though maybe you might have some thought on this forecasting planning idea. Using advanced planning. I hate to put you on the spot, but
yeah, no problem. Yeah, what we've seen, and actually we saw this with our first demand caster customer, was they were in automotive and they were seeing this exact same problem with their customers, and where the demand was obvious, most of the time was tended to be on the high side. And if they purchased to it, they could end up being left with inventory that was that they couldn't use. And this customer also had, this customer was in the electronics space, so they had to get products from overseas. So they had to buy, long lead time items. They had to buy them ahead of time, but they knew they couldn't rely on the forecast that was they were receiving from their customers. And what they had in their old system was that they actually had a planning team that took the forecast from the customers and took different forecast sources like the market IHS forecast, and also inputs from their sales team, and they now came up with their own forecast. And that's what they now used to plan the forecast out into the future. And actually, they actually drove production with that forecast. But the challenge they were having was how could they do that efficiently in Plex? And that's where DemandCaster came in, because DemandCaster's advanced business planning, and then it was the S&P process really fitted well within that model, where that forecast will be developed in advanced business planning, and then that will be sent down to the requirement planning, where you create your master production schedule. And the good thing about a good feature in DemandCaster, which enables customers to be able to address this, is the fact that you don't have to produce to the customer order. You can produce to the forecast. So you have it's decoupled. You have a choice on an item by item basis what you produce to. So so in this situation, the customer, for the item, you could select a sector and say, I want to produce entirely to my forecast, versus using my customer order. Even though you will see on the screen, you'll still see the customer order line, but you'll also see the forecast that's coming from the advanced business planning tool. And so that gives that flexibility. Also, in addition to that, there are other options as well, in terms of you could produce within your lead time. You could use you could produce to the customer to orders within the lead time, and then use the forecast beyond that. So there are options in the DemandCaster to handle that. Well, that to me, I think, was really the cleanest way to really address this issue, because the challenge is that the demand is coming in from the customer, and you can't really change it. Changing it, you're affecting the customer documents. But what you want to do is you want to really decouple what you're producing from what the customer is sending you. So this is based on your knowledge of your knowledge of how reliable the customer information is, and any other information that you can use. So being able to decouple that, what you're producing versus what the customer is sending you, is the key thing. Because the objective really at the end of the day is to make sure that you're getting the products out when the customer needs it.
So Bill Brussman brought a question up. Can forecast be uploaded to DemandCaster on a weekly basis or a daily basis?
Yeah, the forecast can be uploaded to Demandcaster on a weekly basis or daily basis, and that can be used to drive demand. What we've seen with in the use cases we've seen, usually the planning cycle in advance in SNOP, it's longer term. So you can do that. You can have a monthly cycle on that, and then you can still modify the forecast in requirement planning. And we've seen we have upload tools to upload forecasts and that it can be done daily and as frequently as you want.
Is there a way to do that same thing without having the Demandcaster product?
You can upload forecasts into the automotive data forecast module. There's a forecast. There's an upload for it.
And that's exactly the piece that I was using, but then the customer demand still, from the testing that I've done, and maybe I've missed a setting or something like that, but it was still driving, the customer demand was still driving the outbound month.
Yeah, because the consumption logic in PRP is not, is pretty limited in terms of, if I recall correctly, it uses the high of the two
right.
each period. And so it's, if the customer's demand is higher than your forecast, it's going to use that. And that is where Demandcaster is able to handle it with a bit more sophistication, in which you have the ability to do more on the consumption side. Yeah,
and then that sort of agree upon model of what you think the demand's going to be then gets pushed back into Plex.
Yeah, we actually have we have some customers that operate that way, where you can do it in, we have different models. So we have some customers that push back the forecast into Plex, and then they drive the MPS from Plex. We have some customers that actually create jobs in Demandcaster and push those jobs into Plex. So they actually create the MPS in Demandcaster and push that into Plex. And then we have some customers that are now doing full MRP in Demandcaster and just pushing jobs and purchase orders into Plex. What we've seen is that customers, it's easier to work with one tool. So if a customer is using Demandcaster for one tool, probably easier to do to work with one tool. So we're trying to make it easier to work within one tool. We also have, and this was a product I think we built about 3 or 4 years ago. We also saw that a lot of customers were using the IHS data for their forecasting. So there's actually an integration between in advanced business planning that allows you to do very similar to what we have in automotive data upload, I think is what it's called in Plex. Very similar way you can load the IHS data into advanced business planning, but it's actually automated in in the advanced business planning. So if you want to use that to supplement your forecast inputs, you can use that as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how the data is sent to Plex, to answer your question, Albie.
Okay.
Bill asked a question, does Demandcaster keep a change log?
Yeah, that's actually one tool that is maintained in Demandcaster that's very powerful. There is what is known as a waterfall chart that that is maintained. So every planning cycle you have, so if you plan on a monthly basis, the forecast that's generated during that month is kept, and it's actually saved. So and there's a report they can go in to see. So on a part number basis, on a customer basis, on any level of aggregation you're interested in, you can see on a month-to-month basis the changes. So I can look at, if my customer is sending me a forecast through the end of the year, I can look and see, all right, this month, this is what I got for my forecast in June. next month, what was my forecast in June? What's the difference? And so this information can be used to track the reliability of the forecast from customers and also communicate to them. So when you're having those conversations in terms of the reliability of their forecast, you actually have some hard data to support it.
Great, thanks, Sola. Elizabeth asked a question. If we utilize frozen fence days, is there an option in Plex to receive notification if the EDI comes in with variances? Veronica, that's a possibility, isn't
Not
it?
that I know of. No.
No?
No. There's nothing that I know of that checks the what is in the system against what is coming in the EDI.
So theoretically, then we could say we got in a request today for 250 pieces. We froze the time fence. The EDI comes in at 200 pieces. We're still going to send 250, and they'll, in essence, the proof of the 200 coming in will exist in the EDI document, but there won't be any notification saying, "Hey, this changed within the frozen time frame."
Correct.
Yeah, that's our experience as well. Yes.
Now, Veronica, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is that a report that could be written, or are we is this just like chasing ghosts?
No, that is something we could take the, maybe.
Easy for you to say.
Yes, I circled on that one, right? You know,
Yeah.
if we can find the EDI data because it's not actually being loaded because it's a frozen time fence, we'd have to compare the inbound EDI against what is in the system in orders. So it's maybe.
Okay, I'm just going to put I've got a couple, my next slide here, I'm sure you can hear me typing, is the next step here. So, next things we want to do, because we are, we're coming up on Q2 here. A lot of really good questions. I don't know that we've come up with a really great answer yet, but I will commit to finding the name of the release change sales report in UX, which I think I found. I just got to test it, and someone else's PCN has actually got changes. And Amy, I'm going to dig up those two frozen fence settings. One I found right away, but I'm not always that fond of digging for those in front of people. So what I'll do is when I post this out to YouTube, I will actually put the I'll put the settings in the description of the meeting. Are there any other questions for the team here today? I know I feel like we don't really have a great solution. We've got some ideas. Is there something that we would like to put together into an ideation for Plex that we could all vote on?
In theory, if you had a report that said, your EDI is different from your frozen fence, you should be able to have a report that shows you that your EDI is different from your EDI. There was, and I haven't revisited in a long time, there's two reports in Plex, in Classic anyways. One is the future monthly revenue by customer, and the other is the customer schedule analysis by part. And there was a guy from Avon who had taken these two reports where you download them into Excel, and but I'm just saying, if you can do it in Excel, you should be able to do it in
Sure.
Plex. But you basically, it looked at what was shipped the day before, the requirements the day before, and the requirements that day, and it compared it all out, and it showed you exactly what changed. I did find some bugs in it, and I could never get it working quite right. Otherwise, I'd be married to this report. I mean, it took like 5 minutes.
Was it something that you found out in the community? Amy?
No, this is something I got from Richard.
Okay. I know Richard's still in the Plex community. He's not at Avon Gear anymore. I think he's with one of the partners now.
Yeah, but this thing that he wrote, and it just, like I said, I found some bugs, and I could never get it to quite work the way he had intended it to. But it was a beautiful report, assuming that you could just tweak it and get that one that one bug out.
Does anybody want to work with me on specking out how that report would look? And we can get something out in ideation and let everyone on the call here know that, you know, hey, we could maybe set this up as a burst report that gets delivered daily, where go to the customer service folks, they can communicate with the customer. Would anybody want to help me with that?
I have another angle on this thing. When I signed up for this meeting, I said, "Ooh, this is an impossible problem that we have." And I was really interested in what would happen. And as Veronica started going through the spreadsheet thing, it occurred to me that there could be, using a Plex API, the EDI could be imported into a web app, and the changes, the change log, if you will, or our problem is we have some customers who are really uptight and some who are all over the place. And there's no silver bullet to cover them all. But if we downloaded the EDI into a new app and met on it weekly, say, and people decided, you know, how good the customer was, and then we uploaded it back, a built-in handicap Plex has is Plex can't really let customers change data or add tables or stuff like that. And we don't have Demand Caster yet. I'm really hot for us to get it, but based on what Sola was saying, I don't see it. I think this third-party app, if you will, I don't know. I'd like to think I could do it myself someday, but that won't be tomorrow, certainly. But I think that's really the only way to do this. And I don't think, because of the limitations of Plex, that chasing ghosts is really workable. But I'm excited about a web app to do this with the Plex APIs.
Veronica, what are your thoughts on that?
That is like a cool idea. And I know there's a whole mess of APIs out there that Plex has written, and I've seen some for EDI. It is worth exploring.
Do you think this would be something that my friend Mike could whip up, Veronica?
I'm definitely thinking it's something our friends could work up.
Okay, I don't want to make any promises for them while they're not on the call, but Bill, can I reach out to you to help spec this? Maybe Albie, Bob, you and I could get together to write some specs, some thoughts.
Sure.
And we
Yeah.
work with a development partner that might be able to build something like this. And if 5 or 6 or 10 people want it, they'll be the first ones to cost share on it. They're a great partner to us. So.
And for those who don't use APIs,
The APIs are available to everybody, Annie. So you wouldn't have to worry about it. They're just out there for our use.
Yeah, I sort of share Annie's like not hesitation, but the caution, right? Like at Kuster, we haven't played with them at all. But if they end up being almost seamless in that, pull the data out, process it so that you can say, all right, from here to here, I trust this information, pump it back in. Yeah, I'm good with that. But it's just, it's that for me, it's all of the silos are all inside of Plex. It's pulling one little function out and putting it back in. That's always a bit of a hesitation on that data exchange in and out. But if it can work seamlessly, I'm open.
Beautiful. Let's see what we can spec up and see what we can find. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Go ahead.
Patty, I can go over this report that Richard worked on, and then you can see if it's something that could be developed within Plex.
Beautiful. What I'll do is I'll get a meeting together with you, Annie, Bill, Bob, and Albie, and we'll see what we can come up together to spec. We'll put it out in ideation, see if Plex wants a part of this, and if they don't, like I said, we'll take it to our development partners and see what they would say, and maybe they'd be willing to sell it as sort of an external report available to all the customers. So we'll find out from them. Between EDI and report development, I think that you won't find anyone less knowledgeable than I about those two things. So always want to be honest about what I do and don't know. We're coming up towards the top of the hour today. I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. How'd you like the session today? It was a little bit more give and take. Was it good having other customers present?
I love roundtables. I've always been a fan.
Okay, good. Good. I like that. I mean, the last one we did was like a geek speak with Veronica. That went over pretty well too. I know it's been a while, and we're going to be working on getting our next sessions going again by the first week of May. We've already had 4 successful go lives this year, and we've got 3 more scheduled by the 1st of May. So our next session is likely going to be the 2nd week of May. So please send any feedback you have on this session to Jill@control.m.solutions. And as a reminder, this presentation is going to go out on our YouTube channel along with our about 45 other videos here. They're all no charge, no obligation. Like I said, we truly believe that the stronger the Plex community is, the stronger we will all be. And a quick reminder, we are proud to be a premium sponsor of Rock Live coming up in Orlando, June 13th to 16th. That is the new PowerPlex. Visit us at our booth there. Come to one of our multiple speaking sessions. And to learn more about this, www.plex.com/PowerPlex. The early bird registration comes out, I think, April 11th. So just a couple of days. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. It's been a long time. Be looking forward to seeing y'all. Thank you very much for your time today.